Welcome back to the My First Rodeo podcast, the podcast that asks really cool, interesting, and famous people about the various firsts on their paths to success. Today is no exception. We have a really interesting, cool, and famous guest, Jay Birmingham. You, if you're not in the running world, may not know his name, but you will want to get to know this guy, both in terms of his running accomplishments and just in the way he approaches life and the way he's approached things. Most significant thing, at least in my mind, that he accomplished is he did a trans-American run. He ran from the West Coast to the East Coast in just a little over 71 days. He did it in 1980, and he did it before there were all the things that might provide comfort to a runner that we have available today, whether it's fancy drinks or shoes or dry fit equipment or GPSs or any of those things. He did it without any support. He did it without any human beings joining him permanently along the way. He certainly encountered people along the way, and that's a really fascinating part of his journey that you'll hear about and that we talk about. But he did it with a backpack, and he did it with two pairs of shoes, one that met him about halfway, and the shoes that he ran with. He did it with regular old T-shirts. He did it with Mountain Dews. He did it with payday candy bars, and he did it. That wasn't the end of his accomplishments. He went on to run through a number of the United States. I believe, how many did he run through? I wrote it down. He ran 147 days in 1988 through 26 states contiguously, and we'll talk about that journey as well. And he ran a number of other significant runs that I think you'll find just fascinating in terms of the way he approached things. So we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But I always like to start with hopefully something interesting and something provocative and then something good. I'll start with something good and a bit self-serving, but it seems apropos of the day that we have a world-class runner on that I would tell you that Freed to Run did in fact run. We did our run on the week before Thanksgiving, the week after Veterans Week, and we ran for 24 hours in Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida, and we raised over $200,000 for Shelter for Elders, which provides legal care, wraparound legal services for the indigent and homeless and housing insecure senior community, and to support checks for legal aid. It's not too late to donate. You can go to freed2run.com. That's FREED, like my last name, 2TO, not the number, but 2TO, freed2run.com. And we welcome your contribution. The Dolores Barr Weaver Legacy Fund provides a match, so you can get in on that by making that donation. But I was able to run 77 miles. I was pretty thrilled about that. There was an overall winner Regina Sui, who ran over 93 miles, I believe. We had teams of people that ran as much as 165 miles, and just a lot of people out having a good time and raising money for a good cause. So thank you for everyone who supported Freed to Run. This was the 8th running of a version of Freed to Run, and already planning for the 9th. So that was exciting. In terms of something interesting, really just want to provide another unsolicited, unpaid for movie review. If you get a chance to watch on Netflix, The Light You Cannot See on Netflix, just really resonated with me. It's a beautiful story, and I won't give too much away, but it is a World War II era movie that takes place near the end of the war, deals with Nazi opposition, and in particular is told predominantly from the perspective of and using the protagonist, who is a wonderful actress and a woman who is blind. At least the character is blind. I don't know whether the actress is. And just a beautiful and ironic name of the movie, The Light You Cannot See, and the importance of broadcasting and communication and connectivity. And another great example of characters. Certainly there's some heroic characters, but really just blurring that line between good and evil, and that nobody is 100% good or 100% bad. I like stories that do that. Maybe it makes me feel better about myself or better about others I encounter, but I sure found it interesting. And I invite you to share other stories like that with me, because I'm always looking for them. And there's one that I recommend that you watch. In terms of provocative, I heard something interesting this week, and maybe it'll be interesting to you. And it was just a simple point, but it really runs contrary to, I think, the way, I'm 55 years old, the way this generation, my generation, parents, to some degree, compared to how our parents parented and how parents before that parented. And the notion was that our kids really don't care about what we do or what we accomplish, at least not on a daily basis, certainly from a legacy perspective. And, it's nice to know your parents have a good job. It's nice to know, when you're preparing a eulogy or as you get older and you have kids, cool things your parents did that you could share with your kids. But on a daily basis, we spend way too much time, I think, talking about and sharing with our kids what we've accomplished or the challenges that we have at work or with coworkers or the accomplishments that we have, whether it's an award we win or something like that. And that's really not something that our kids care about or should have to care about. Now, prior generations, I think, maybe focused a little too much or certainly in a heightened way on, the kids, maybe to a fault where a lot of us didn't even know what our parents did during the day. And you certainly have friends who don't even know what their parents' jobs were or can't articulate it. I think we've gone too far in the other direction, and maybe there's a healthy balance in between. But it certainly helped me this week to think when I interact with my 5 kids or parent or just talking with the ones who are out of the area on the telephone, that focusing on them makes a lot more sense than focusing on me. If they have a question, especially for the little ones, they'll ask. They ask lots of questions, but they're not there to be our audience. They certainly need to be respectful in an age-appropriate way, but we are their audience. They are not our audience. I thought that was interesting, and you might be thinking, hey, Freed, no duh, and in which case it's not provocative at all for you. But if you're like me, and you needed a moment of self-reflection to focus and maybe just look at things in a different way, I hope that's helpful for you. I'm excited about today's interview. This is me talking to Jay Birmingham. Jay Birmingham, welcome to the My First Radio podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Where do I find you today?
I live in Raleigh, North Carolina now.
All right. What are you doing up there? Why did you decide to retire up that way?
Retired.
Yeah.
And my wife retired last June, and we're up here because of my daughter.
That's nice. That's great.
New grandson.
Good for you. That's a good place to be. How are you enjoying the hills? You still running up there?
Yeah. I love the hills now.
Yeah. Not a lot of training in the hills down here, right?
Nope. I had to really seek them out in Jacksonville.
Yeah. We have the bridges, which help a little bit, but not nearly enough, right?
Well, when I was at my racing best, I developed a 21-mile course over in Arlington that used every hill in the River Bluff area.
Interesting.
Around JU and there's a lot of neighborhoods that have a hill that drop down to the river and then back up.
Right. What, 200, 300 feet, maybe above sea level?
Well, yeah, there's no cure for that.
No.
But for 30 years, I had a camp in Colorado. And so every summer I'd get reacclimated.
Amazing how long your running career has been. I'll say has been because it's still going.
Yes.
Obviously you did something that very few people have even attempted. And to my knowledge, nobody else has accomplished, at least not at your pace. You ran from the West Coast to the East Coast in a little over 71 days. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
71 days in a few hours.
Just under 72 days. Yes.
And I think obviously what makes that so incredible and is the time in which you did it, 1980, I believe, which meant, and I haven't analyzed every product that we now have to sort of spoil us or make things a little easier, but the shoes were not as good. The gels probably didn't exist. I don't know whether there was Gatorade, but even whatever there was, you didn't have it available to you because you were running with what you had on your back, right?
That's correct. Yes. And these days, there's a number of people who've done a Transamerica, but even people who do it solo, they they are pushing like a little carriage in front of them, like a stroller with their gear in it.
Uh,
And just a few people have done it with the backpack on their backs. And anyway, it's still it was a great experience. I did two other really long journey runs after that, and always carried the backpack and did them solo.
and I love that idea or that name, Journey Run. I don't know if you coined it or if it's been more popularized now, but it's the idea that there are marathons. Everybody knows what those are for the most part. There are ultras, which are, as I understand it, anything over a marathon at one time. And then there's
Yeah.
what you did, and others do in various capacities, and that is long runs, usually marathon distance or longer, or maybe a little shorter each day, but for repeated days, and in your case, almost 72 days.
Yeah. Uh, I've always called those journey runs. Um, a group of us who have been Transamerica people um, collectively produced a book called Running Across America, or Running America on Foot, or Across America on Foot. I didn't come up with the title, but there's 27 of us in that book. And we each had a chapter, and they were in chronological order. So my chapter was chapter number 3. And then I helped, along with another guy, write the introduction to that. It's available on Amazon, but I think some of them thought they were going to make money from that project. And my experience is, that's not the best way to earn a living or even make extra money. So I think I got a royalty check after about a year for $40.
There you go. Books, well, books and running, for that matter, are probably not the most profitable endeavors in the world, are they?
No. Maybe 40 years ago, I realized that this had to be a passionate hobby and not something that I do for money.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Well, talk about what got you started in running, and then what got you started in the concept of the journey runs, and ultimately going after that Trans-American record.
Well, I got started in high school, junior. Well, they didn't call it junior high back then, but 7th grade and 8th grade track. I didn't run a cross country race until I was in my first year of college, and that wasn't at the college I was attending. That was with a club out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I grew up in Ohio. And so I ran cross country, started a cross country team at my college, had 2 years of track eligibility. But in the meantime, I'm running track, cross country, and road racing with these older guys. I mean, one guy was 32 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty old.
Almost everybody quit after college at the latest. There was no road runners clubs or, not much going on. With the exception of California and New England. And there were little hotbeds of distance running there. But when I was in high school, John F. Kennedy, well, actually, JFK started, had a 50-mile walk thing that even disc jockeys and other people got involved in. And it was a 2-day thing for the military, but somehow it was misconstrued, and there was a little flurry of people doing the 50 miles in a day. It wasn't races, it was solo people. And usually because so few people did it, it was newsworthy.
Sure.
So it would be on the radio or on the Dayton Daily News or something. And one of my classmates and I did 50 miles in a day. And, it was from dawn till dark, and like 12 hours we were out there, and we didn't get any publicity or care for it. But near the end of my college career, I was running marathons and also races as short as a half mile. But I realized I had kind of a knack for recovery, overnight recovery, compared to other people. Even I could run a marathon the next day, I could go out and train. maybe it's a lack of athleticism, but I could push myself really hard one day and feel really exhausted and tired and sore. But the next day I get up and I'd be able to at least go out and run however far I wanted to do.
Sure, which is not, I mean, just for those who are not runners, or maybe, some people run a 5K and they're laid up for a week if they haven't run a 5K. Certainly most people running a marathon for the first time are sore for quite a period of time. And what you were able to do and shared with me, and I've done in my own little way, is just for some reason able to recover real quickly after doing something Herculean.
Yeah, I couldn't race all out say the river run followed by a 10K the next day. That would, that would exhaust me to the point where, I couldn't train for a week probably. But if it were something as far as the marathon where I couldn't go, say, sub 6 minute pace, I could recover. And I don't know why, but that was just maybe the only talent I had. So anyway, I was in college at the University of Dayton, and the Dayton Daily News had an article about this guy who was crossing northern Ohio. His name was Don Shepard. He was a South African, saved his money for several years, ran from LA City Hall to New York City Hall. And the reason he chose those 2 points was that in 1928 and 1929, there were 2 races across the United States put on by, kind of a promoter. He actually was the agent for the figure skating star Sonia Haney. And later he was Red Grange's agent. So he was basically an agent for sports back in the 1920s. So he put on these 2 races in 1928 and 1929. And they were stage races where at 7 a.m. you would start where you left off the day before, and everybody would be on the starting line, and they would run to the next town between 30 and 50 miles away, and the clock would be running the whole entire day, and then they added the times together, and kind of like the Tour de France.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
And so anyway, that was there were 50 some finishers the first year in 1928, and they took like 84 days. And then the next year, he didn't make any money off of it. So he said, oh, we'll do this again, and we'll go from New York to Los Angeles. And I believe they had only 19 finishers that year. But they did go like 2 days faster. I mean, by design. So that was the time that this South African was trying to beat, was something on the order of 83 days. And he succeeded, knocked a couple of days off, quote, the record. Of course, nobody follows exactly the same route. They can have the same starting and finishing point, which was City Hall to City Hall. But, and these 26 guys that are co-authors of this book, Across America on Foot, none of us started at exactly the same point, finished at exactly the same point. Maybe 2 other guys did LA to New York City Hall, because more people had done that route than anybody else, than any other route.
Right.
Anyway, that put the idea in my head that maybe someday I could do that. 4 years later, an Olympian from Great Britain named Bruce Tulloh, with a support vehicle, actually he had 3 vehicles with him and a camper trailer. And he was a sub 4 minute miler. I'm not certain if he was in the Olympics, but perhaps he was. He was really good at 5,000 meters on the track. And I think he lost his amateur status. And that precipitated him getting some sponsorship, which was really rare back in the late 1970s. And he was going to do LA to New York City Hall to City Hall and beat Shepard's record, which was completely different animal because he had support crew that Tulloh did. So those were the 2 guys. Both, interestingly, Runner's World magazine, they had a company that produced books for them. And both of these guys wrote books.
Okay.
Well, I, of course, bought both of those books and devoured them and thought, wow, this is so cool. I wonder if I could ever do anything like that. But in the meantime, I was just a serious road racer, the marathon being my best distance. And I was living in Jacksonville at that point, moved down from Ohio to Florida.
Okay.
But I realized that about 1976 that I wasn't going to be Olympic caliber. I wasn't even going to qualify for the Olympic trials. And the next year, 1977, I did my first attempt at a Trans-America run. And I only made it to Arizona the first day, the first week.
Only Arizona.
I was going too fast. I had a support crew, an old high school chum and his son, and we had a camper. But I was going too fast, too many miles each day.
Yeah.
And a guy in New York City named Ted Corbett, who is kind of considered the father of ultra distance running in the United States. Corbett and I corresponded off and on. He helped me certify the course for the Jacksonville River Run back in 1977, I think, or maybe 78. But he lived in New York City, and he encouraged me in 1977. But he said, have you considered maybe doing it Shepherd's way? And what he meant was, with a backpack, pick your own pace.
Right.
Don't push the pace. Treat each day like a training run. And so I started training with that in mind. There was a magazine called Runner, which was a competitor to Runner's World. But the editor and all the staff were former Runner's World people, so they knew what they were doing. You might have heard George Hirsch.
Okay, sure.
In New York City. And New Balance had been a supporter of mine for years, by giving me mostly free shoes, but no money. But Runner Magazine and New Balance both offered me $1,000, $500 up front and $500 if I finished.
Wow, that's pretty generous.
So that was the extent of my sponsorship.
I want to backtrack for.
Sorry.
So I want to backtrack for just a second. So you do the first attempt with some support, and you said you came out fast. We're doing too many miles a day. What were you doing on average from LA to Arizona?
I was doing 45 to 55 miles a day.
Gotcha. Wow. And then how many days to get to Arizona?
I made 11 miles into Arizona.
Wow.
And I was a cripple. So we went back to a campsite in the middle of the Mojave. I'd never run in the desert before. Took 10 days off. They had a stationary bike. They had a swimming pool. And back then in 77, I had some financial support from a Jacksonville company called Seaforth Laboratories. They were making a product best called nutritional supplements. They had a product called Muscles Now and Energy Now and Slender Now or something like that. They all tasted the same to me, but you mixed them up with milk, and they thought they were going to make a fortune selling. What do you call it? Not sponsorships. Tupperware sales. What do you call it?
Oh, like multi-level marketing.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So anyway, they were a local Jacksonville company, and a local attorney named Buck Fannin.
Sure, I know Buck. Yeah.
Buck connected me with this guy who ran Seaforth Laboratories. And so I had money. I had the promise of my job back when I finished in 1977. But anyway, we stayed in the desert for 10 days. I felt like all my problems were over. We went back to LA, and I started again with no fanfare, whatever. I broke down in 2 days.
So attempt number 1 and number 2 are those two. They're very close together.
Right. Well, 10 days apart.
Yeah.
So I didn't even make it to the middle of the Mojave the second time. All my Achilles and calf problems and foot problems, they recurred in 2 days because I was going too fast.
Yeah.
I was running an 8-minute pace. I could have been walking.
Sure.
And not broken down at all.
Yeah, that's the trick for sure.
I was racing 6-minute pace, so that wasn't hard. I was basically running at a pace I didn't need to run. I
Yeah.
was going too many miles.
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point, what makes you not just say, I tried it, I'm done? I mean, you're in pain. You've tried something. You didn't get nearly as far as you wanted to. It would have been really easy to quit.
Well, it was easy to quit. Actually, the second time, because there was no question.
Yeah.
My Achilles were all lumpy, and
Mm.
my calves hurt, and my feet hurt, and um, all I had was my friend and his son, and we drove back to Ohio. I dropped them off, drove the camper back down to Jacksonville, turned it into Arlington Toyota,
Right.
and that was the end of it.
Clearly, you had to tell the C4 supplemental people that their stuff didn't work, right?
No, that wasn't a factor.
Okay.
No, my lack of good judgment. So 3 years later, Ted Corbett, a wonderful patient, ultramarathon hero to me, he said, you might consider doing it Shepherd's way. So I started running with a backpack, and I hated it.
Yeah.
It didn't weigh much, but I just, I'd never done that before. But after about a month, I was fine and started carrying some extra food and stuff in it, mostly cans of Mountain Dew.
Cans of Mountain Dew. So no sophisticated water bottles, no sophisticated
I don't think there were
supplements.
any plastic water bottles back in those days.
Yeah.
I had a glass jar that some nurse gave me with a tight lid on it, and that's what I carried. But eventually, I just went with soft drinks.
Wow.
Citrus flavored soft drinks. So anyway, I restarted May 19th, 1980 with a backpack. I got a signature from the mayor's office there in Los Angeles, like I had done 3 years earlier. The day before, Mount St. Helen blew up.
Oh my goodness.
Volcano in Washington.
Huh.
And it's a lot of trepidation in Southern California that would trigger the big one, the earthquake that would cause Southern California to slide into the Pacific.
Mm.
That's before I think I knew about plate tectonics. Not quite that simple. But people said, are you worried? Yeah, there were some tremors in California, nothing major. But I didn't really relax until people quit talking about it, about 4 days across in a town of Indio. And I finally crossed the San Andreas Fault. But I was completely healthy, averaging about 35 to 40 miles a day. And without the camper, I had to kind of finish each day at a cheap motel or where somebody offered me lodging.
And in that case, again, for younger people that are listening or old people that have forgotten, you don't have a cell phone.
No.
You probably don't even have phone numbers to call ahead because you don't exactly know where you're going to be.
Headquarters.
And so you're just showing up in these towns and then passing towns, hopefully, during the day and trying to find something to eat.
Never ran at night for fear of injury.
Right. And you're by yourself. What are you carrying in your backpack? You talked about Mountain Dew. What else do you have?
Payday candy bars work really well for me. I wouldn't pass they didn't call them convenience stores back then, but a gas station. I'd eat a lot of crackers, peanut butter crackers, that kind of thing. And every little mom and pop restaurant, I'd stop, and cheeseburger seemed like the safest thing to eat because I figured the hamburger would be a turnover. It would turn over rapidly compared to, say, fish or steak or anything else that would be sitting around in the back of their refrigerator.
I remember you telling me you would ask them, what do you sell a lot of? So whatever they sold a lot of was what you bought.
Yes. Yeah. So I didn't go for the specials.
Right.
I went for, and I never got tired of simple food. And, I wasn't a novice. I was in my early 30s and I'd done this kind of thing for 15 years. So I wasn't, I was learning some things on the fly. One of them was witness signatures. The Guinness people that I contacted back in 1977 said, these kinds of things, you need a lot of witness signatures, and you need to tell as many people as possible the route you intend to take, and be available for news people, contact the local press, uh, radio stations, anybody. The more contact you have, the more valid we consider your effort.
I
And he
see.
also said, we only are interested in the fastest time.
Yeah.
I realized, well, that was 1977. This is a different animal. So they didn't have a separate category for unaccompanied. Um,
And so what was the fastest time prior to you?
I think 56 days, but I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Through 2014, there was a guy who had compiled a list of over 200 people who had done a Transamerica.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the starting and finishing points varied a lot. But there were so many people doing alternate routes. And after he had done his Transamerica, I think he started in Washington and finished in Savannah. Wallace, John Wallace III. And he pushed a stroller with his gear in it.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of quit doing that. And to my knowledge, there's nobody who's the keeper of the record anymore.
Interesting.
So for the last 9 years, including some of the people in this book, it's been I guess, an honor system. There's a guy named Pete Kostelnick who broke the previous record, LA to New York, or I think he might have gone San Francisco to New York. And I think he broke 56 days. But the record was set in the fastest time with accompaniment was also 1980.
Oh, interesting. So the accompaniment record was set the same year you set your record.
Yeah, unaccompanied. And Ted Corbett was at the finish line for me. He made arrangements with the New York City Roadrunners Club and the police to get me across the Verrazano Bridge,
right?
Which is a big deal. That's what the New York City Marathon uses. But if I got there at 9 a.m., they would get me across the lower deck with a police escort. I mean, that was really
that's a big deal.
Pretty cool. And the Jacksonville Press was up there, the Times Union, two of the TV stations. So it was pretty good publicity,
That's
which
amazing.
I got no money for, but it was pretty gratifying that it was recognized by the people of Jacksonville.
It's quite a legacy. Now, in terms of route, I'm geographically and logistically impaired, but I'm picturing, obviously this is before GPS. This is before, any sort of phones that would allow you to get there. So you're using maps and I'm assuming, we'll talk about your route, because I'm assuming you might run down a particular road and you might find that there's water and you may have to turn around and go a different way. Is that how it worked out?
By water, you mean like the road's flooded?
No, I'm sorry. Meaning like there just may not be a road to get you over a particular body of water or a creek or something like that.
Well, first of all, I spent a lot of time planning in 1977, and my route was going to be the same as Bruce Tulla's route, the guy who ran fast, the Olympian from Great Britain. By fast, I mean he started at like 45 miles a day and finished 50 miles a day and 55 miles a day, which sounds extreme, but a lot of us have done that kind of thing, especially if you have a support crew.
Right.
Now, sometimes after dinner, he would walk 3 miles to get in more mileage, but he could stop any place he wanted. Well, I was going to follow basically the Tulla route, which was just a little bit more planned than Don Shepard's route in the 1964. Shepard kind of winged it. I admire him more than anybody else because he didn't know what route he was going to take. He just knew he was going to keep going east. He crossed Nevada and Colorado, two states that I did not. And then once he got basically up to the level of Denver, he went straight east the rest of the way. Tulla went across the Arizona, New Mexico desert and then angled northward through Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri. And at that point, he picked up what now is Interstate 70, but US 40, across southern Pennsylvania to New York City. I mean, there's other routes involved. So both times I was going to take the Tulla route, the southern route that angled northward. I guess at St. Louis, the two routes would converge. So I'd do what you said, get a local road map. Word would get out, not as quickly as it would today, but people would say, I heard such and such on the radio, or I read a newspaper article in the Riverside Gazette, that's California, that you're running across the country. Let me show you an alternate route through such and such a county. And they'd meet me on the road, and I'd run 10 miles with them. And they say, now you be sure you stay on this dirt road. It parallels Route 66, but there's no traffic on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I need water and food. Oh, there's a couple cafes. You'll be okay.
Wow.
So I have a lot of unplanned help on that, in the sense that, people were more than happy to help me.
And that's where some of your lodging came from as well?
Yes, the witness signature. I'm sorry, the witness signature thing that Guinness suggested turned out to be a terrific advantage. I'd run up to a gas station, and a guy would be out there, and I say, hey, I learned not to say I'm running across the country, because most people didn't appreciate, couldn't picture that. So I'd say, I started today in Miami, which is in Arizona, and I'm trying to make it to Globe, which is another town. I'm going to guess they're 35 miles apart. And can you tell, I need a witness signature that you saw me here at mile marker 47.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you my witness signature. And they'd write that down. I said, well, make sure you tell what time of day it was. And they would. And then it only took me about a week to realize they're going to say, well, where do you spend the night? And I said, well, I'll try to find an inexpensive motel. Do you know any place up there in Globe? And they said, I've got a cousin that lives in Globe. Let me call him, and I'll get back with you. I said, well, I'm not staying here. I'm going to go on up the road. Well, an hour later, maybe 2 hours later, this guy drive up, and he say, hey, my cousin's all set to put you up for the night.
Wow.
So this happened about, I would say, half the time. I would get free lodging.
That's
from
pretty neat.
A stranger. And occasionally I'd say, well, I'd like to go another 6 miles before. Well, I'll come pick you up.
Wow.
I'll look for it in an hour. And it worked out a lot. And all I had to do is just keep getting witness signatures at the starting and ending point, and usually 2 or 3 more during the day.
Right. And people were pretty gracious. Did you have any weird or unusual or even uncomfortable experiences with people's hospitality?
None with the hosts.
No.
All my hosts were more than gracious. Usually get 2 free meals out of it.
Right.
I'd get a free dinner and a free breakfast, which helped me. Hey, there's my wife.
Hello, your wife.
With my water. That's Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
She showed me how to use Zoom.
She did well. So that's interesting. And I'm guessing at the end of the night, you're pretty tired. So they're wanting to talk to you and find out about you, and you're ready to go to bed.
I had to give them a biography every day.
Yeah.
So occasionally, at least once every 3 or 4 days, I would opt for the cheap motel just so I could get a relaxing evening.
Yeah, break.
And that, I kept myself going. I had an injury in Texas, a shin injury that caused me to have 1 0-mile day and 1 11-mile day. But those were the 2 worst.
I seem to remember, am I remembering right that you had to make like a makeshift sort of brace or something like that for those days?
I did. I made a makeshift orthotic out of multiple layers of insole material.
Wow.
The other thing that I did, which also was suggested by Appalachian Trail hikers, but Don Shepard, the South African, he did this too, and that's a mail drop system.
Right.
He would have a box with a backup pair of shoes, any other odds and ends that he wasn't using, and he'd mail it ahead, about a week ahead, to a general delivery, which most people don't know about, but a post office. And I learned not to send it to a a very small town rather than a big town. My first mistake was sending it to Tempe, Arizona, which is a huge suburb of Phoenix. And I didn't know that. But I went to 3 different post offices before I found the one that did general delivery mail in Tempe. And after that, I always found a town that was little so that the post office might even be on the main road.
I got you. Otherwise, you're having to get a ride or worse still, walk after you've run all day to find a post office.
Now, I didn't count those miles, but I could have, I guess.
Yeah, I would say. That's incredible. And how many pairs of shoes did you go through in those 72 days?
2.
2 pairs of shoes.
Yes, I used a product called Shoe Goo. It's just a kind of a tar that's used for to affix tiles to people's floors.
Right.
But it was being used to repair running shoes before running shoes were so ubiquitous as they are now. But I put a layer of Shoe Goo on at each of my mail drops. And then 2 or 3 days it was gone, but it kept those shoes going. And I switched out shoes in Tulsa and only had 2 pair of shoes the whole route.
That's incredible. So those of us who do some degree of journey running know what you wear fabric-wise is important. There's obviously various lubricants you can put on to reduce chafing. You had very little of that, and you were carrying a backpack. So at the risk of asking for too much information, how bad was that, and what did you do about it?
Petroleum jelly.
Yeah.
It was the lubricant of choice for everything. And to treat blisters, iodine, and let them be exposed to the air overnight, and more petroleum jelly. That was it.
Yeah. That's crazy. Your skin looks pretty good. I'm assuming you did whatever you could hat-wise and otherwise to avoid damage there?
I wore a cap, painter's cap or a ball cap most of the time, but I can look almost right into the sun. I don't obviously look at the sun, but I don't mind the sun being in my face.
Yeah.
I don't burn very easily. And when I do, I peel quickly and then I get tan again.
You were made for this.
Clothing. Yeah. I didn't wear anything that would be called modern fabric. I just wore T-shirts and flimsy little nylon shorts. I did have a little windsuit, just real thin nylon windsuit, kind of a silver colored. And that was it.
And what did you
realize that 2 days that my first mail drop, there was stuff I was carrying that I didn't need. And I realized by going through all these little towns, there were very few things that I couldn't buy on the fly. Wow. So I threw it away or I packed it in my box.
And in laundry, did you occasionally do laundry or you just threw things away?
Rinse out my socks, my underwear, my shorts. I didn't have underwear. Every night, would switch out T-shirt. I'd get rained on once in a while, although not across the middle of the route. And of course, if I stayed in somebody's home, I'd throw everything in the clothes washer.
Right.
And they'd always offer because I probably smelled strong.
Imagine.
But I did laundromats occasionally. And if it was raining and all my clothes got wet, I'd drop into a laundromat and throw everything in the dryer except my windsuit. And I'd sit there for half an hour and rest and dry everything out. Sometimes I would pin my wet socks to the outside of my backpack. So one pair could be drying while I was wearing the other pair.
Wow, so resourceful. How, and I want to talk about some of the other amazing runs that you've done, but suffice to say, there are others. And how has your body worn over time? You look great. I've seen you run in as recently as the past couple of years at some cross-country meets. How is your body doing? Do you find any long-term effects of these things you did?
No, and I've been asked that a lot. Amby Burfoot, he won Boston in 1968 and was a writer for Runner's World for decades. He has a blog or almost a daily report about people who have long running careers. And some people, don't miss a day. They run every day for a mile or something. But he got in touch with me last year, maybe 2 years ago, about my longevity and asked a bunch of questions. And, some of these people are retired, but I have come up with the idea. And of course, I've been a physical educator, a teacher, and a coach, and a teacher for years. And I think the secret to my longevity is I've never put on weight. I've never gotten fat. I've never had a long layoff. Even an injury, like I broke my foot moving about a year and a half ago. We moved from our house to an apartment and then up here to Raleigh. And for about a year, I was limping along pretty well, but I didn't put on more than 10 pounds. And I kept walking and doing what I could. And I'm completely over that. I've run 3 races in the last 3 months, a 10 miler, a 10 kilometer, and a 8 kilometer race. And I'm coming down to Jacksonville to run the last gasp cross country. I'm very slow now, but I still race hard. I run as hard as I can. But the other thing is no layoffs and don't gain weight. I also have a very low foot carriage. I don't land hard. I've always landed heel first, except when I was racing the mile and the half mile. Mm-hmm. But as I slowed down with age, I became kind of a flat-footed runner. And I think that my quads seem to absorb most of the shock rather than my joints.
Right.
So I've never had a joint problem. I have friends that have hip replacements and knee replacements. I don't have any sign of that.
That's amazing. Well, you're definitely built for that. That's for sure. So you do this in 1980, and I know at least one of the most significant things you do after that is you set out to run a course that would take you through every state in the United States.
Yeah, that was 8 years later, yes.
Yeah, talk to our listeners about that and what came of it.
Well, the only sensible thing to mention is that in 81, I ran Death Valley to Mount Whitney and became the second person to achieve that. And again, I was going for a record. Now, the reason I did that was there was an article in Runner magazine, the same people that hosted me in New York City when I finished in 1980, about the guy who had done it. And he tried 3 times to achieve it. Other people had tried and failed. And I thought, oh, gee, I'm a good hot weather runner now. I can handle the heat. And I love climbing mountains. I like running Pikes Peak. So I was working at the time part-time at Baptist Medical Center in Jacksonville. And they offered to pay all my expenses to do the Death Valley run. So they gave me $800 as my budget. Actually, right. That was after the fact. I didn't know how much it would cost. But my wife at the time and my 3 children, my 3 stepchildren went with me. So that was 81. And I succeeded, broke the record by several hours.
And what was the record and what did you achieve?
It had been 81 hours and I ran 71 hours.
71's definitely important to you, isn't it? You got 71 days, west to east coast, 71 hours, Death Valley to Mount Whitney, huh?
That's just luck. Interestingly, most of my journey runs have finished on July 30th.
Isn't that funny?
Okay, so the next year, there was a guy who ran down through Jacksonville, actually two different people in the late 70s. One of them was trying to make a bunch of money. In fact, he was pretty discredited for keeping half the money that he was supposed to give to, I think it was multiple dystrophy or something. Mm-hmm. And he ran down Riverside Avenue, and I ran a few miles with him. A year or 2 later, a guy ran from Fort Kent, Maine to Key West, Florida, the whole length of US 1. And I got to know him. His name was, anyway, I'll think of it in a minute.
It's okay.
So I wanted to be since I lived in Jacksonville, I wanted to break his record. And I did. And I did that run. in the summer. And I was teaching school, so I did these things in the summer, from Fort Kent, Maine to Key West, Florida. And that was 42 days and 8 hours. So I was shooting for 50 miles a day. I averaged 47.7 a day, again with the backpack.
Sure.
So that was 82. Time passes. In 84, I attempted to go to all 48 states. Barnett Bank, which was the biggest bank in the area at the time, I got to be friends with the president of the bank, and they said, "Jay, you're great publicity for us." And I don't know why they said that, but they were going to give me as much money as I needed in 84 to go to all 48 states. And I thought, okay, well, 31 miles, 32 miles a day, 1,000 miles a month. Somebody in New York had tried this and failed after, I think he was doing the perimeter. And he went about 9,000 miles and quit. And I thought, I can do 12,000 miles in a year. So I was doing 31, 32 miles a day, same format. Some days would be 20 miles and some days would be 40.
Yeah, and to be clear, you're having to get from one state to the next, or you run the miles in the state and then you transport another way?
I run every no breaks.
And no cars or air travel to get from state to state?
They're in the backpack still.
Okay, got it.
So 84. Well, I made it all the way down through Florida, up the west coast of Florida, got injured coming off of the Skyway Bridge, jumping out of the way of a dump truck.
Oh, wow.
Injured my hip. I limped all the way to Texas. And I quit after 1,771 miles.
Wow.
And I felt, again, kind of like 1977. I'm kind of sheepish, hearing all this advanced publicity, and then to be for me, a failure. Failed to accomplish. And I tried to run through it, and I tried to walk through it, and I couldn't. So I came back, and all was forgiven. Nobody cared really except me. But in 1988, 87, my stepmother died and left me enough money, about 2 years of teaching income. And I thought, you need to give this another try. So I could quit my job. And in 1988, the day after River Run, I started off, and instead of going to Florida Peninsula, I went straight north. And I made 4,526 miles in 21 weeks, 147 days. And just like the scene in Forrest Gump, I'm tired. I want to go home. And I had really nothing left to prove. I was tired of spending every night in a different person's home or a different motel. All the luster was gone. I didn't want to be interviewed anymore. I didn't want to read another historical marker. So that was my last journey run, 1988.
And how many states did you get in that 147?
26 states. 26 states.
Wow.
45.
That's amazing. You ended it on your own terms.
I basically did 1.5 times the Transamerica run.
That's incredible. I want to finish with one question, but I want to ask you a second to last question. That is, you've shared with us some of the things you've learned about running and your success. What for those folks who don't run but take on other goals, whether they're emotional, mental, spiritual, just life itself, what's sort of your biggest takeaway from those challenges that you set out to overtake and did overtake, or even those that you failed?
Well, I was a coach my whole life, and coaching other people has taught me persistence, just continuity, not taking breaks. That's so important. And to kind of congratulate yourself every day that you go out the door, or every time you go to the gym, and just have I hate the concept of a streak, which implies that you fail if you break your streak, but just be unrelenting, just persistent day after day after day. And then you just start to have more and more confidence in yourself. And whether I'm working with a beginner, high school, college, an adult, an elderly person, I've worked with all those kinds of people. Just get started today. And I mean today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't schedule it for January 1st. Start today and do something that you haven't done, something that you intend to do. Do it, start today, and then do it again tomorrow. And if it's like 3 push-ups, tomorrow maybe you're sore and you only can do 1 push-up, but try to get something going. And just, I used to tell my runners, especially my college runners, if you're going to eat today, run today. And it was just a matter of not giving yourself the option of taking a day off. Now, I know that you need to take a day off once in a while for illness, some family, something comes up and you have to take the day off. But to schedule days off, plus those missed days, pretty soon you don't have any momentum. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, that's true.
Just say, okay, yesterday I didn't do what I wanted to do, but today I'm going to pick it back up. And if you have to start over, you start over. You don't beat yourself up and say, I'm a failure. Just start over and do it again.
I love that.
But anyway, it really works for me. It works for everybody I've ever coached. And how fast you are, how far you go, those don't matter. But if you have these, you make your mind up to do something and you accomplish it in small pieces. And maybe that's all you do. You do 10 push-ups a day the rest of your life. I mean, that's 3,650 push-ups in a year.
There you go.
Compared to doing none.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm big on keeping momentum.
I like that. And, it occurs to me that if you're not making momentum in a positive direction, you're probably making momentum in a negative direction, which is, what a lot of us do, justify quitting.
Yeah. And some people, they get down on themselves, and all you have to do to reverse that is just restart.
That's great.
And again, don't wait till tomorrow to do it. Do it today. Just start today.
That's outstanding. What a great example. And I want to thank you. Of course, you were kind enough when I decided to create Freed to Run and to run from Tallahassee to Jacksonville, which seemed impossible to me, in part because I wasn't even a runner to that point. You were kind enough to take me seriously and give me some advice. And this has always meant something to me. And I don't even know if you meant as much in saying it as it has resonated in my head. But I said, I think this would be a good way to raise money for a cause. I think people will be attracted to the idea of me doing something crazy. And you stopped me. We were eating pizza over in Clay County. And you said, let me offer you another perspective. Don't refer to it as crazy. And you seem to really not like the idea that I would refer to it as crazy. And I've carried that with me. Can't say it hasn't slipped out or that others haven't accused me of being crazy as they have you. But what I took from that is, no, it's not crazy. It's a goal. And if you treat it as crazy, maybe you're less likely to achieve it.
Yes, and I think there'll be people listening who jump on that and say, yeah, that is crazy, instead of, oh, what a great example that is, or I wish I could do something like that. I heard that 100 times. I wish I could do something like what you're doing. And I said, I think you could. Find something that's meaningful to you and give it a try.
Right. That's great. Well, it's resonated with me and it's inspired me. And I'm so grateful that you took that time when I called you. You didn't know who I was. And I'm glad you took the opportunity to join us here today and to document your amazing life and your amazing journey.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Jay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that time with Jay Birmingham. What an incredible man, full of energy and inspiration that obviously helps those who are interested in running or physical endeavor, but also just life, just the things that you have to do to get through life. And just this notion of creating momentum, positive momentum, where you do something, you don't make excuses, and you do it day in and day out. And yeah, if you miss a day, then you don't use that as an excuse to move in the opposite direction. What a great lesson for all of us. When there's so many distractions, there's technology, there's innovations, there's things that make life easier. And here's a guy who just took what was there physically in terms of the limitations and went from coast to coast and did all these incredible physical endeavors with the most simple of materials. His relational ability to get from place to place and talk to people and to trust people. And we could say it's a simpler time and that could never be done, but I'm not so sure. I think those places and those people and those abilities remain, but for some reason they seem so far away. They seem impossible. They seem like something of a quaint movie, or maybe even a fictional story, but they're not. They're things that happened in his lifetime, and they're things that are still possible in our daily endeavors, and certainly in our journeys. Just as he journeyed from place to place, we have the opportunity to journey throughout our day and throughout our life, and to use it to create those moments and to create a legacy like Jay Birmingham. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that you will share this podcast with your friends. I hope you'll subscribe, and I hope that you'll come back with us again next time on the My First Rodeo podcast.
My First Rodeo.